You know the vibes. Welcome back to another episode of the Hoop Genius podcast brought to you by NBA 2K23. If you don't already have your copy, don't know what you've been waiting for, but make sure you hit the link in the description to get your copy of NBA 2K23. BJ and I are back to talk more basketball. BJ, you ready?
Oh, stay ready, Mo. Stay ready. Stay ready. Stay ready.
Well, you know, the trade deadline is creeping up on us. It's the 1st of February today as we record this. And that means, you know, there's about 2 weeks left until the deadline. And a lot of teams are waiting to see the moves of the Toronto Raptors because they've got Scotty Barnes, but they've also got some older players, the Fred VanVleets of the world and the Siakams of the world who were there on their championship team. And OG Anunoby is another player who's wholly in the trade rumors right now. And a lot of teams are waiting to see what the Raptors do before making their moves because a lot of players want to get, you know, OG or maybe Pascal, maybe Fred, maybe even Gavin Trent Jr. So I want to talk to you about OG because every year we talk about most improved and every year I want to pick OG, you know, from the London roots, slightly biased, but also I think that he's a fantastic player and that he has a lot of potential. Now, there was a rumor a few weeks ago that a team had offered 3 first-round picks in exchange for OG, and no one knew who the team was, and then rumors came out that it might have actually been the New York Knicks. My question to you, Mr. Armstrong, is where do you see OG Anunoby ending up? Because there are reports that he is unhappy in Toronto. Is there a team you would like to see him on before the trade deadline?
Well, I think the teams probably that will be most interested in him will be contending teams. You know, for example, the Memphis Grizzlies. I think the Milwaukee Bucks. I think the Boston Celtics. I think Philadelphia 76ers. I think teams that really feel they have a serious possibility, you know, to win the championship this year will inquire about him. He's a very valuable player. Because of his ability to defend. Highly coveted position, which every team is always looking for 6'6", 6'7", 6'8" guys who can defend on the perimeter, those 2s and 3s. So I think a lot of teams, I think the Phoenix Suns will be a team that will possibly be a destination for him because of his ability to the things that we just, you know, and I just mentioned. Also, I think the Suns have a player that probably resembles him in Jay Crowder. So I would look for, you know, the Toronto Raptors to possibly move him for a player like that in a 3-way deal. You know, I don't think they, talking about the Toronto Raptors, would necessarily want to sign and trade or trade and then sign him, Jay Crowder, at his age. If they decide to begin to break up that team and restart or, you know, retool, as we like to say here.
I think Jay Crowder's an okay comparison. I think he's more similar to Mikal Bridges, who they already have over there in Phoenix. I think OG is a better player than some people give him credit for. You mentioned how good he is on defense. He was the Defensive Player of the Year candidate this season, I believe, with what he's been doing on that end of the ball. On offense, he's improved his handles and his ability to score off the dribble. He's made over 38% of his threes over the last 4 years. He's only 25 years old. And the reason why Toronto allegedly want to get rid of OG is they do want to get out of paying him after next season, as he may command a significant payday. And some people say he's got a long injury history. However, when I look at it, OG Anunoby, I see very strong vibes of Jrue Holiday. Remember the trade of Jrue Holiday from New Orleans over to Milwaukee? Because people said Jrue Holiday had an injury history, but he was a great defender and he could do a few other things on the offensive side of the ball. I think, as you rightly said, a contending team could definitely do with OG. He would be a nice third option in the big 3 on a championship level team. But I mentioned the Knicks and the reports going around. I want to know what your thoughts are on this deal of OG Anunoby heading to Madison Square Garden, because that makes them a tough team. You know, you got Brunson, you got Barrett, you got OG, you got Randall, you got Mitchell Robinson in exchange for Emmanuel Quickley, Cam Reddish, Derrick Rose, and at least 2 first-round picks. Now, for Toronto, Emmanuel Quickley is obviously a very young, exciting player that they can look to build a relationship between him and Scotty Barnes. Cam Reddish is a project with a lot of potential who hasn't really had a chance in the league. Derrick Rose, obviously, for the salary, and he could even get moved on to a contending team where I believe he could contribute even more rather than the rebuilding Raptors. But would you like to see OG on the Knicks?
Um, I was just listening to the trade. Maybe that happens. I don't I wouldn't. I don't think I could see that happening. Other than you're going into now a full retool or
rebuild slash
rebuild
tank, but we won't say it.
situation. I don't anticipate that happening. I think the most valuable part of that trade would be the draft picks, which would place them Philly which would place the Toronto Raptors in a full out rebuild.
Yeah.
I would imagine or think if they were to get, that trade, okay, let's say they were to, consider that trade, both teams, the Toronto Raptors, to me, without question, would ask for RJ Barrett back.
Bringing a Canadian boy home.
That would, because now if you have RJ, OG,
well, OG would be in
Brunson,
New York, and RJ would be in Toronto.
Yeah, OG. No. But your initial trade kept all those guys on the same team.
Yeah.
If you kept all of those guys on the same team, I don't think that's a good fit.
Okay.
OG, RJ, Brunson, Randall. I don't think that's the construction of that group, to me, doesn't fit. However, if you took RJ and you moved him on and then you replaced that with OG, okay, I could see that. Okay. But I don't anticipate that other trade happening. Maybe it does. It's not one I would consider. However, if they were going about a retool up there in Toronto and you're able to get RJ Barrett along with Scotty Barnes, now you're cooking. Now you're cooking. Now you're cooking. Now, to me, now I'm excited about, okay, now I got draft picks back. I got different things for Siakam, Van Fleet. Now you're saying I'm going to build around a team where defensively I should be above average. Two wing players who have nice size, athleticism. Both of them play on both sides of the basketball. Maybe they're not the best offensive players. Maybe they're not the best defensive players. However, they are better than average with size, and I can build around that. Now, that to me gets me excited. Getting draft picks back and having Scotty Barnes and all that. Okay, I don't know about that one, but well, if I could get draft picks back and get those two and be in the Wembanyama sweepstakes, now you're saying great move. Now that to me is a great move. That's the Messiah. I would be like, wow, how'd you pull that off? So that to me gets me really excited. But, it's the NBA, and I guess anything is possible. But, I don't know the full details. But just going by what you said, I would try to get RJ Barrett back because I think he's a terrific player. He's already signed. And I think that would be a good move for them. In particular, now that we know the collective bargaining agreement is up, the salary cap will move up. And you have a really nice player signed at a really, to me, a great contract moving forward.
Well, the deal that excites me most is the Memphis Grizzlies trying to acquire OG Anunoby because they've got some picks. They've got some young players. Maybe they don't have a player of RJ Barrett's caliber to send in return, but if Toronto are going to go into a full rebuild, getting OG on the Memphis Grizzlies would be, for me, maybe that would make them favorites to win the Western Conference because you got then a lineup of Ja Morant, Desmond Bane, OG, Jaren Jackson Jr., and Steven Adams, or Brandon Clark, or you can even go small wall and have Dylan Brooks in there. Defensively, that unit, we mentioned it briefly yesterday, that's very scary. The other ones that we could consider is the Indiana Pacers. If you put OG on the team with Tyrese Halliburton and Miles Turner, I like that a lot. And then the OKC Thunder, put OG in there with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, because the OKC Thunder have got so many draft picks. They've got to do something with those draft picks at some point. I would like that. I think OG can still improve from where he is as a player. But I believe, wherever OG goes, could trigger a series of moves. As we said, Fred VanVleet could then be moved. Pascal Siakam could then be moved. Gary Trent Jr. could then be moved and start a new direction for the Toronto Raptors. So there's a lot of teams in the mix. There's a lot of trades that are going down. But in the midst of all those trades going down, there's another team, the Denver Nuggets, who have put Bones Highland on the trade block, apparently, because they think they're going to struggle to pay him and he wants to have a bigger role on a different team. So they're in a mix of trying to trade Bones Highland, a very promising young player who could one day become very special. But right now, with Jokic playing the way he's playing, they've got to make a move to kind of contend and go even deep into all in now, because they've got Jamal Murray at the point guard. Nikola Jokic is basically a 7-foot point guard. And they've got Bruce Brown, who can come in off the bench, provide defense, and he's pretty comfortable at that one spot as well. So I want to transition now to talking about Jokic, because this is one thing we forgot to talk about yesterday when we were catching up on what we missed. We talked about the Celtics and the Lakers, which was a big matchup. But the big matchup that we haven't talked about was Jokic versus Embiid, the Sixers versus the Nuggets. Did you watch that game?
Mo, I wouldn't be a basketball fan if I did watch it.
It was must-see TV. Now, that game's a big game because I believe in the MVP race, there were some statement games that, for example, last year when these two teams matched up, the Sixers were up and then the Nuggets came back to win that game. Whereas this year, Embiid went out, he dropped 40-something points and absolutely dominated. Jokic really struggled when your coach of the year pick, Doc Rivers, made the adjustment of putting PJ Tucker on him in the second half. And Jokic, for some reason, really struggled against a much smaller defender. So I want to know now, in the MVP race, how much weight does that game, that matchup, because they only see each other twice a year, being in different conferences, how much weight in that matchup does that have on the MVP conversation? Could that swing the balance into the favor of Embiid, who came out and put on a simply dominant performance in that game?
I think the key word, Bo, in all of this is performance. You know, we talk about the influence of the media and all of that. In the end, it's about what you do when you're out there on the court. Joel Embiid had a monster game.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Doc Rivers did something that, frankly, you just don't see often. We are going to double team Joel Embiid and force him to operate, or we're going to force Jokic, that's correct, to do something that he's not accustomed to seeing. He's going to get doubled with another big. Now, why is that important? Jokic is used to being doubled from smaller guys. So when a guard comes to double him, he doesn't even see the double team. That's why he's able to pass it like he's able to do.
Yep.
Because if a 6'4" or 5 guy comes to double team him, he just looks over the top of them. When you come double him with another 7-footer, now his vision for the first time has been obstructed. And that, to me, is what makes coaching, especially at the NBA level, far superior, because these guys understand the details. The fact that he has a power forward in PJ Tucker, who's capable of holding him up on the box. And then you come to double team him from one of Jokic's favorite operating areas, which is on the low post. Suddenly now Jokic doesn't want that double team, and he has to go to the perimeter, advantage PJ Tucker. I mean, that to me was the whole game. You just took away, you don't stop a great player, but you force those great players to make a decision. So the decision by Jokic was to go away from the basket, favor Philly. He wasn't able to, you took away something from him. You just took away one thing from him. And that to me was the difference of the game. Now, offensively, Doc Rivers said, okay, we know Jokic is not a rim protector. Joel, every time we set a screen, guards come off and look to score, which is going to force Jokic to be in what we consider, Mo, drop coverage. Drop coverage means you're going to protect the basket.
Yep.
And what did Joel do? He never did a screen and roll. He screened and pop. And when the jumper was going for the big fella that night from three,
it's a long night. It's a long night when that jumper was a long
night. So for me, the chess match with the coaches, with those great talents, advantage that night was Joel Embiid. It was phenomenal. Like, I loved every minute of it. I enjoyed it. It wasn't so much that Joel dominated him. When you look at the stats, you would say, yes, he did that night. However, it was the advantage. Now, the fun thing is to see how Coach Malone and Jokic would counter that the next game. Because you can't have Jokic not participate on the box. You can't just allow Joel Embiid to just shoot uncontested jump shots. That would be a fun 7-game series.
I would love it.
Because Jokic is good enough to counter that somehow. I don't know how he would or how they would, but that would be fun to watch. So Joel Embiid was fabulous. He played a terrific game. Great game plan. You took away something from a great player, to me, which that's all you can do when you play against a great player. It's not like they stopped him. They just took something away. They took away his ability to operate from one of his favorite places because he wasn't able to pass from the post. He wasn't able to score from the post. He wasn't able to create an advantage for his team from the post. And Philadelphia, they were excellent that game. They really were, in particular Joel Embiid.
So if I had to put you on the spot right now and say who is the MVP currently, would it be one of those two guys?
I think Giannis is back. Well, he hasn't gone anywhere. I think Jason Tatum is there. I think Luka is there. Okay, and I think Joel Embiid is there.
And Jokic?
And I think Jokic, what he's done, and I think Jokic is there. I think it's a 5-man race.
It's interesting because Jokic is averaging a triple-double right now. That's 25 points, 11 rebounds, and 10 assists a game. Number 1 seed in the Western Conference. He's won the last 2 MVPs and pretty much having a better season this year than he did even last year. But then you have Embiid on the other hand, who obviously has the advantage from that matchup, and he's leading the league in scoring with 34 points, 10 rebounds, 4 assists, a couple blocks and a steal. And he's, got the Philadelphia 76ers over the past month or so, one of the best teams in the NBA. They're surging up the East. I think they're in 2nd or 3rd place. And then Jason Tatum, obviously leading the Celtics. He's on 31, 9 and 4 with a block and a steal as well to go with him. Right. Then you got Doncic, who's 33 points, 9 rebounds. Like, the numbers are crazy for everyone this season. 9 rebounds, 8 assists. But for me, Doncic's Mavericks just aren't winning enough games at this point. We're not going to go down that rabbit hole. But then Giannis is the one that intrigues me because we say it all the time that everyone's just got so used to Giannis. And he's averaging a career high in points, 31.8, 3rd in the league right now, 12.2 rebounds, 2nd in the league, 5 assists. And Chris Middleton's missed basically almost like half the season. Mm-hmm. He's missed 3/4 of the season. He's played 12 games. Drew Holiday has missed a bunch of time, and yet the Bucks are comfortably in 2nd place, just behind the Boston Celtics. So it is a 5-man race. If we had to drop it down to a 4-man race, I think Doncic might be the first one to drop out purely because of his team. But then between those 4 guys, there's not much separation. So what do you think will be the separating factor when it comes down to picking? If you have to pick one, what's the separating factor?
Well, I think it's going to come down to performance, like it always should. I don't think there's TV.
But they're all putting up great performances. They're all putting up great numbers, and they're all on winning teams.
Everyone's putting up great numbers. Everyone's putting up great numbers. When I look at the game and the way it's played today, when I look at the way the game is played, right? We play a game that's much faster. So these guys are going to get more opportunities, right? We're shooting the ball earlier in the shot clock. We get an offensive rebound. It doesn't reset back to 24 seconds. It resets 14. Back to 14 seconds. So these numbers should be better. Why? Because they're playing faster and they're getting more opportunities. So what was once 22 points or 23 points a game, which, just 15, 20 years ago was numbers. These guys with 15 extra possessions and a faster pace, and everyone is, for the most part, the best players have a green light to shoot from 3. So, Mo, you add 3 more shots to that, okay? That's 9 points. They're getting to the free throw line the way the game is called. The offensive player has a significant advantage as compared to 10, 15 years ago. A significant advantage the offensive players have. So these numbers, if you're comparing them, you're impressed. As I watch the game and for what it is, I'm going, okay, 30-something points is probably what a good player should average in today's game. Why? Because they're shooting threes. They're getting more opportunities. They have a huge advantage. You can't impede the progress. You can't hand check them. There's nothing you can do. I mean, you watch Luka and these guys. These guys are flopping all over the place on the offensive end. That's just the way the game is. So I think the bottom line is, who's going to finish up the strongest? Everyone. This is a race, and I don't think anyone is more than a step ahead of the other. You know, you look at Jokic. Okay, those are impressive numbers. For this guy to keep doing this year in and year out now, you're going, and he's arguably getting better.
Yep.
Giannis, what are you going to say? This guy is unbelievable. Jason Tatum, wow. Like, the guy goes to the NBA Finals last year, comes back this year, and his team is arguably better. And we've talked about here and other places about what happened there, what transpired there over the summer with their coaching change, so forth and so on. So give him credit. Joel Embiid, he finished his second last year. Clearly, he's in the race. And then Luka, like, wow, this guy I just watched him the other night. He had a 53-point effort. He has got a 60-something effort. This guy is just rewriting the record books down there in Dallas. So all of these guys are playing impressive. However, it's not how you start, it's how you finish. So let's see how these guys are going to finish. That, to me, will be the determining factor on who should be named MVP. We can talk about numbers because that's what we've always talked about. However, because this is a different game, right? Everyone talks about the game is different. The game has evolved. Well, if the game has evolved, that means we have to look at it differently. I've made the conscious decision to say, I'm not looking at the game the way I used to. I'm looking at it from this new lens. And the new lens says, okay, these are great players. They're putting up massive numbers, but those numbers don't equate to the same way that we watch the game. If a guy was averaging 33 points a game 15 years ago, you really would have my attention. I would be like, wow, well, that's pretty impressive. Mm-hmm. However, as I watch the game today, guys just come up, dribble up to the three-point line and shoot it. And that's like, hey, Bo, I watch guys shoot from the logo and no one says a word. I watch one pass shot. I watch step back, double step backs for threes. I watch 5 to 6, 7 possessions where every shot is a three and no one says anything. So it's a different game. So I'm not easily impressed now, by Bo. I watch after timeout plays.
Yes.
And after timeout plays,
sideline out of bounds plays
is a fadeaway three. And that's like, oh, that's a good shot. It's like, okay, Bo, okay. So I can't get wrapped up in all of this. There used to be where guards would come and do a drag and the guy would screen and he'd roll. I watched Brook Lopez the other day drag with Drew Holiday, and he steps back and shoots a one-legged three. And it's like, that's a good shot for Brook Lopez. And I'm like,
Splash Mountain.
Okay. That's the way the game is played. So I'm saying all of this to say, okay, these are really good players, without question. Those are great players, all of them. However, with this now comes a new way to look at the game. 30 points, is really in that era, probably, like I said, 20 to 25 points. And the way they play, you should be able to get 30 points. Mo, you should be able to get 30 points with the way the game is called, with the way they play offense today. You really should. I mean, Mo, you can't touch these guys. You can literally not touch an offensive player. Okay. And so, I mean, okay, I'm not going to focus on the numbers. I'm going to focus in on who wins the game. Okay. And that, to me, is one of the criteria. I think there are a lot of criteria: leadership, durability, availability, and all of those things should come into play. But I think performance and how your team performs, along with your individual stats, is one of the main things that I will continue to look for as we get down and we start to figure out who's going to be the MVP.